Get out of that seat now. First class isn't for people like you." The words hung in the recycled cabin air, sharp and cold. Captain Richard Sterling stood over the woman in seat 1A, his uniform pressed, his sneer practiced. He thought he was clearing trash to make room for a friend. He thought he had the ultimate authority at 30,000 feet. He was wrong. Dead wrong. He didn't know that the quiet woman he was humiliating didn't just pay for the ticket. She paid for the fuel, the wings, and his salary. She owned the plane. And by the time this flight landed, his life would be over. The fluorescent hum of Terminal 4 at JFK Airport was a sound Serena Caldwell had grown used to, though usually she experienced it from the hushed luxury of a private lounge. Today was different. Today, Serena was sitting on the hard, grey carpet of the boarding area, leaning against a pillar, watching the chaos of Gate B12 unfold. To the casual observer, Serena looked like a tired graduate student, or perhaps a weary traveller returning from a long trip. She wore a faded, oversized hoodie, black leggings, and sneakers that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore zero makeup. On her lap rested a battered leather backpack. No one looked at her twice. No one offered her a seat when the waiting area filled up. And certainly, no one suspected that the 34-year-old black woman scrolling through her phone was the majority shareholder of the newly rebranded Horizon Air. Serena had acquired the failing airline 3 weeks ago in a hostile takeover that had shaken Wall Street. The ink on the contracts was barely dry. She hadn't announced herself to the general staff yet. She wanted to see the rot for herself before she started the renovations. She wanted to know why Horizon was hemorrhaging money and why their customer satisfaction score was the lowest in the industry. "Excuse me," a sharp voice cut through Serena's thoughts. She looked up. A tall, impeccably dressed pilot was standing near the podium, berating a young gate agent. The pilot was handsome in a traditional, jawline-heavy way, but his eyes were cruel. His badge read, "Captain Richard Sterling." "I told you, confirm the upgrade for Ms. Vanderbilt," Sterling snapped, tapping his fingers impatiently on the desk. "She's a personal friend." The gate agent, a young woman named Chloe, whose name tag was slightly crooked, looked like she was about to cry. "Captain, I can't. The flight is fully booked. First class is full. I can't bump a paying customer just because—" "You can if I tell you to," Sterling hissed, leaning over the counter. "I'm the captain. My word is law on this vessel. Find a way. Bump the cheapest ticket holder. I don't care if it's an employee pass or some frequent flyer upgrade. Just do it." Serena's eyes narrowed. She tapped a note into her phone. Captain R. Sterling, coercion of ground staff, prioritizing personal connections over protocol. "I'm trying, sir," Chloe whispered. "But seat 1A is a full fare purchase. It was bought last minute at a premium. The passenger is already here." "Who is it?" Sterling glanced at the manifest on the screen. "Serena Caldwell. Never heard of her. Probably some corporate diversity hire burning company miles. Just get Ms. Vanderbilt on the plane. I'll deal with the seating arrangement once we board." He turned on his heel, adjusting his cap, and strode toward the jet bridge, not bothering to look at the passengers he walked past. He nearly tripped over Serena's outstretched leg. "Watch it," he muttered, brushing invisible dust off his trousers. He didn't even make eye contact. He just saw an obstacle and stepped around it. Serena pulled her legs in, her expression unreadable. "My apologies, Captain," she said softly. He ignored her and disappeared down the tunnel. Serena stood up, slinging her backpack over one shoulder. She walked over to the podium where Chloe was frantically typing, trying to fix the mess Sterling had demanded. Is everything okay? Serena asked gently. Chloe jumped, looking up with wide, fearful eyes. Oh, yes, ma'am, just technical difficulties. We'll be boarding shortly. Group 1. Serena held out her digital boarding pass. That's me. Chloe scanned the pass, and her eyes widened when she saw the code, FCL, full fare. She looked at Serena's hoodie, then back at the screen, confused but polite. Oh, Miss Caldwell, you're in 1A, right this way. Thank you for flying with Horizon. Thank you, Chloe, Serena said, noting the girl's name. Hang in there. As Serena walked down the jet bridge, she felt the familiar cold steel of resolve settling in her chest. Captain Sterling was about to learn a very expensive lesson in hospitality. First class on the Horizon, Boeing 777 was dated. The leather was cracked in places, and the carpet smelled faintly of stale coffee. It was another item on Serena's mental checklist. Refurbish cabin interiors immediately. She found seat 1A, a window seat on the left side, and settled in. She placed her backpack under the seat in front of her. Most of the other first-class passengers were already seated. Men in suits, typing on laptops. A woman in diamonds, sipping pre-flight champagne. They gave Serena sidelong glances. She didn't fit the aesthetic. She looked like she belonged in the back row near the toilets, not in the premier seat of the aircraft. Serena ignored them, pulling a book from her bag, a beat-up copy of The Art of War. She buckled her seatbelt and waited. The boarding process continued. The cabin filled up. Just as the flight attendant was preparing to close the main cabin door, a commotion arose at the front galley. Captain Sterling emerged from the cockpit, looking agitated. Beside him stood a woman who looked like she had just stepped off a runway. Blonde, towering heels, and a leopard print coat. This must be Miss Vanderbilt. I don't care what the computer says, Sterling was saying to the lead flight attendant, a stern woman named Beatrice. Tiffany sits up here. She's not sitting in economy comfort. Captain, there are no seats, Beatrice said, her voice tight. She clearly had dealt with Sterling's tantrums before. Every seat is occupied. Sterling scanned the cabin. His eyes glossed over the businessmen. They landed on the woman in diamonds. He smiled charmingly at her, then moved on. Then his gaze landed on 1A. He paused. He blinked. Then a slow, incredulous smirk spread across his face. He leaned down to whisper something to Tiffany, who giggled and covered her mouth, looking at Serena with disdain. Sterling straightened his jacket and walked over to seat 1A. He stood in the aisle, looming over Serena, blocking the overhead light. Serena didn't look up from her book. "Excuse me," Sterling said, his voice loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. Serena turned a page. "Yes?" "I need to see your boarding pass." Serena marked her page with a finger and looked up. "I showed it at the gate. Is there a problem?" "The problem," Sterling said, chuckling darkly, "is that I think there's been a mistake. This is first class. The crew rest seats are in the back, and the economy section is rows 20 through 50. I am aware of the layout of a Boeing 777 captain," Serena said calmly. "I am not crew, and I am not economy." "Look," Sterling said, dropping the pretense of politeness. He leaned in closer, invading her personal space. "I don't know who you scammed to get this ticket, or if the system glitched, but you are in the wrong seat. This seat is reserved for VIPs. "My ticket says 1A, Serena said, her voice remaining steady, though her pulse was beginning to hammer in her ears. "I paid for it." "You paid for it?" Sterling laughed. He turned to the cabin, inviting the other passengers to join in the joke. "She says she paid full fare." "In that outfit?" A few passengers chuckled nervously. The woman in the leopard print coat, Tiffany, stepped forward. "Ricky, come on. It smells like old gym socks over here anyway. Just move her." "You heard the lady," Sterling snapped, turning back to Serena. "Grab your bag. I'm moving you to row 34, window seat. It's a favor, really. You'll be more comfortable with your own crowd." The racism was thin, veiled only by the thinnest layer of corporate plausible deniability. The air in the first-class cabin grew heavy. "I am not moving," Serena said. She unbuckled her seatbelt, but not to leave. She shifted to face him fully. "I purchased this seat legally. I have a contract of carriage with this airline. You have no grounds to remove me unless I am a safety threat or intoxicated. I am neither." Sterling's face turned a shade of crimson. He wasn't used to being told no, especially not by women who looked like Serena. "I am the captain," he snarled, pointing a finger in her face. "I determine who is a safety threat. And right now, your refusal to follow crew instructions is a threat to the order of this flight. I'm giving you 10 seconds to get up and walk to economy, or I'm having you dragged off this plane." Serena looked him dead in the eye. "Captain Sterling, I strongly suggest you rethink your next move. You are making a mistake that you cannot undo. 1, Sterling counted, ignoring her warning. 2. Is there a problem here?" A man in seat 2C spoke up. He was an older gentleman with silver hair, wearing a bespoke navy suit. He looked authoritative. "Stay out of this, sir," Sterling warned. "Just handling a stowaway situation." "She doesn't look like a stowaway," the man observed dryly. "She has a ticket. I saw her scan it." "It's a fraudulent ticket," Sterling lied smoothly. "Security flagged it. Now, miss. 5, 6. Serena pulled her phone out. "I'm going to record this," she stated, "for liability purposes." Sterling swiped his hand out, knocking the phone from her grip. It clattered onto the floor, sliding under the seat across the aisle. "That," Sterling whispered, his voice trembling with rage, "was a mistake. Now you've assaulted a flight crew member by recording without consent in a secure area." "I didn't touch you," Serena said, her voice dropping to a dangerous register. "You just destroyed passenger property." "Get security," Sterling yelled to Beatrice, who was watching in horror from the galley. "Get the airport police down here. I want this woman off my plane, now." Beatrice hesitated. "Captain, we are already delayed." "Do it!" Sterling screamed, his spit flying. Serena sat back, crossing her arms. She looked at Tiffany, who was smirking and checking her nails. She looked at Sterling, who was panting with exertion. "Okay," Serena said softly. Call the police, but make sure they bring the Port Authority supervisor. You're going to need him." "Oh, I'll call them," Sterling sneered, "and you'll be leaving in handcuffs." 2 Port Authority officers squeezed down the narrow aisle of the Boeing 777, their heavy utility belts scraping against the armrests. The tension in the cabin was suffocating. Every passenger in first class, and the first few rows of economy who could see through the curtain, was craning their necks. Captain Sterling stood tall, adjusting his tie, playing the role of the weary protector of the skies. "Thank God you're here," he said to the lead officer, a burly man with a buzz cut named Officer Miller. "This passenger has become belligerent. She refused a direct order to vacate a seat she isn't authorized for, and when I attempted to verify her ticket, she lunged at me." "That is a lie," Serena said. Her voice was calm, but it had a tremor of pure, suppressed rage. She remained seated, her hands visible on her lap. "I didn't lunge. He knocked my phone out of my hand to prevent me from documenting his harassment." "She's delusional," Tiffany chimed in from the galley, sipping a pre-flight mimosa she had somehow already acquired. She was screaming at him. "It was scary. I don't feel safe flying with her." Officer Miller looked at Serena. He saw the hoodie, the messy hair, the battered backpack. Then he looked at the captain, a man in a uniform that commanded automatic respect. Bias, unconscious and instant, filled the space between them. "Ma'am, you need to grab your things and come with us," Miller said, his hand resting near his baton. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." "I have a valid ticket," Serena repeated, her eyes locking onto Miller's. "If you remove me, you are participating in an illegal breach of contract. I want to speak to your supervisor. I specifically asked for a supervisor." "I am the supervisor on the floor right now," Miller snapped, "and the captain has declared you a safety threat. That means you get off the plane, now." Serena took a deep breath. She looked around the cabin. A few people held up phones recording the interaction. Good. The world would see this. "Fine," Serena said. She stood up slowly. "I will comply." She bent down to retrieve her phone from under the seat. "Don't reach!" the second officer yelled, stepping forward. "I am getting my phone," Serena said, holding it up. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb of glass over the date and time. She looked at Sterling. "You owe me a new phone, Richard." "That's Captain Sterling to you," he sneered. "And you're lucky I don't press charges for assault. Just get her out of here." "Turn around and place your hands behind your back," Miller ordered. Serena froze. "Is that necessary? I am walking off voluntarily." "Standard procedure for a disruptive passenger who allegedly assaulted a crew member," Miller said coldly. He pulled out the zip ties. The metal cuffs were for criminals. Zip ties were for the disorderly. But the humiliation was the same. Serena turned around. She felt the plastic bite into her wrists. She felt the heat rising in her cheeks, not from shame, but from the sheer indignity of it. She was worth $4 billion. She owned the very metal tube they were standing in. And she was being trussed up like a turkey because a man with an ego couldn't handle being told no. "Let's go," Miller said, shoving her lightly by the shoulder. Serena walked. The walk of shame is what they called it in the industry. She walked past Tiffany, who was now settling into seat 1A, fluffing her leopard print coat. "Bye-bye, sweetie," Tiffany mocked, waving her fingers. "Try the bus next time." Sterling stood by the cockpit door, arms crossed, a victor's smirk plastered on his face. As Serena passed him, she stopped. The officers tried to push her forward, but she planted her feet. She leaned in, her voice low and icy. "Enjoy the flight, Captain. It will be your last." Sterling laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Threatening a pilot? That's another felony. Add it to the list, officers." Serena was guided off the plane, down the jet bridge, and into the harsh fluorescent lights of the terminal. The gate agent, Chloe, was standing there, her hands covering her mouth, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Miss Caldwell," Chloe whispered as they passed. "I tried to tell him." Serena looked at the young woman and offered a small, reassuring nod. "It's not your fault, Chloe. You did your job. Keep doing it." As the officers marched Serena away toward the airport holding precinct, the heavy door of the Boeing 747 closed behind her. The lock clicked. Inside the plane, Captain Sterling grabbed the PA system microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. My apologies for the delay. We had a minor security issue regarding a non-compliant passenger, but it has been resolved. We are now cleared for pushback. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the service. Next stop, London." The passengers applauded. They clapped for the man who had saved them. Serena Caldwell heard the muffled applause through the glass of the terminal window as she was led away. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just started counting. 1 hour to gather the legal team. 2 hours to land. 3 hours to ruin his life. The airport police holding room was a bleak box of cinder block, painted a depressing shade of beige. It smelled of industrial cleaner and stale sweat. Serena sat on a metal bench, her hands now freed from the zip ties, rubbing her wrists. Officer Miller sat across from her at a metal desk, typing up his report. "Name?" he asked, without looking up. "Serena Caldwell." "Address?" 1400 Pennsylvania Avenue, she said automatically, then corrected herself. "Sorry, force of habit. My previous job was in D.C. Current address is the penthouse at 432 Park Avenue, New York." Miller paused. He looked up, eyebrows raised. "The penthouse? At 432 Park? Okay, lady. And I live at Buckingham Palace. Let's try the truth." "That is the truth," Serena said calmly. "Officer, I am going to ask you one time to Google my name. Just type it into your phone. Serena Caldwell." "I don't have time for games," Miller sighed. "You're being charged with disorderly conduct and interfering with a flight crew. Captain Sterling is filing a formal complaint." "Captain Sterling is a liability," Serena said. "And if you book me, you will be named in the lawsuit for false arrest. I am giving you an off-ramp, Officer Miller. Look at my phone, the one your partner has in the evidence bag." Miller glared at her, but something in her tone, the absolute, unwavering authority, made him hesitate. He reached for the plastic bag containing her cracked smartphone. He tapped the screen. It was locked, but the notification screen was lit up. There were dozens of notifications. New email, Board of Directors, emergency meeting. New email, General Counsel, acquisition finalized, news alert, Horizon Air's new mystery owner. Who is Serena Caldwell? Miller stared at the screen. He saw the background photo. It was Serena shaking hands with the President of the United States. He swallowed hard. He looked from the phone to the woman in the hoodie. The resemblance was undeniable. You know the President?" Miller stammered. "I was the Undersecretary of Transportation before I moved into private equity," Serena said. "And 3 weeks ago, my firm, Caldwell Ventures, acquired a majority stake in Horizon Air." The silence in the room was deafening. The hum of the vending machine in the hall seemed to roar. "You own the airline," Miller whispered. "I own the plane I was just dragged off of," Serena corrected. "And I own the employment contract of the man who ordered you to drag me." Miller's face went pale. He stopped typing. He slowly deleted the line he had just written. "Ms. Caldwell, we were just following the captain's protocol. Under federal law, the pilot in command has absolute authority to maintain safety," Serena finished for him. "Not to enforce personal seating preferences for his mistress. You were used, officer. He weaponized you to humiliate his boss." Serena stood up. "I need my phone, and I need a conference room. Now." Miller didn't argue. He unlocked the evidence bag and handed her the phone with trembling hands. "Right this way, ma'am. You can use the commander's office. He's out for lunch." Serena walked into the private office and closed the door. She didn't call a lawyer. She called the Horizon Air Operations Control Center, OCC. "Ops, this is Director Vance," a voice answered. "Vance, this is Serena Caldwell," she said. There was a rustling of papers on the other end, then a sharp intake of breath. "Ms. Caldwell, we didn't expect to hear from you until the shareholder meeting on Monday. How can I help you?" "I'm at JFK," Serena said, her voice dropping to a terrifying calm. "I was just removed from Flight 882 to London. Involuntarily." "What?" Vance choked. "Flight 882, that's Captain Sterling's bird. It just took off 20 minutes ago. You were removed?" "By the police," Serena said. "Sterling bumped me to give my seat to a woman named Tiffany Vanderbilt. He assaulted me, destroyed my property, and had me arrested." "Oh my God," Vance whispered. "Ms. Caldwell, I am so sorry. We will turn the plane around immediately. I'll radio the cockpit." "No," Serena commanded. "Do not turn that plane around." "Ma'am," If you turn him around, he lands back here, and he claims mechanical failure or a security threat. He controls the narrative. I want him to fly the full 6 hours to London, Serena said. Her eyes were fixed on a map of the Atlantic Ocean on the commander's wall. I want him to sit in that cockpit for 6 hours, thinking he got away with it, she continued. I want him to eat his first-class meal. I want him to laugh with his co-pilot. And while he is in the air, I want you to prepare the ground in Heathrow. What do you need? Vance asked, his voice snapping to attention. I'm chartering my private jet. I'll be in London before he lands, Serena said. When Flight 882 touches down, I don't want a gate agent meeting that plane. I want the Horizon Regional Director. I want UK local law enforcement. And I want the entire ground crew to be aware that the man flying that plane is no longer an employee of Horizon Air the second the parking brake is set. Copy that, Vance said. We'll draft the termination papers immediately. Gross misconduct, use of company assets for personal gain, assault. And Vance? Yes, Miss Caldwell. Find out who Tiffany Vanderbilt is. If she's on a comped ticket, I want her billed for the full price of a first-class transatlantic fare, retroactively, plus interest. Consider it done. Serena hung up. She looked at her reflection in the darkened window of the office. She didn't look like a victim anymore. She looked like a shark smelling blood in the water. She opened the door. Officer Miller was standing there, looking like he wanted to vanish into the floor. Am I free to go, officer? Serena asked. Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Can we offer you a ride to your hotel? No need, Serena said, hoisting her backpack. My Gulfstream is waiting at the private terminal. I have a flight to catch. I have to get to London before my employee does. She walked out of the precinct, the cracked phone in her hand buzzing with incoming calls from the board. The drama was over. Now, the business began. Meanwhile, 35,000 feet above the Atlantic, Captain Richard Sterling leaned back in his pilot's seat. He turned to his first officer, a young man named Jenkins who looked uncomfortable. You see that, Jenkins? Sterling laughed, gesturing with a coffee cup. That is how you handle the riffraff. You have to be firm. It's my plane, my rules. I don't know, Cap, Jenkins muttered. She seemed really calm, and she had a full fare code on the manifest. Doesn't matter, Sterling dismissed him. She's gone, and Tiffany is happy. That's all that counts. Smooth sailing from here on out. He took a sip of coffee, watching the clouds drift by, blissfully unaware that he was flying a multi-million-dollar machine straight into a hurricane of his own making. While Captain Sterling's Boeing 777 trudged across the Atlantic at 550 miles per hour, Serena Caldwell was cutting through the stratosphere at Mach 0.99225 in her Gulfstream G6R50R. The private jet was a sleek silver bullet compared to the aging, lumbering giant Sterling was flying. Inside the cabin of the Gulfstream, the atmosphere was the polar opposite of the stale air and tension aboard Flight 882. There was no cracked leather here. The seats were buttery, soft cream hide. The wood veneer was polished walnut, and the silence was absolute, save for the soft rustle of papers. Serena had not changed out of her hoodie and leggings. The attire was now a symbol of her fury. She sat at the conference table in the mid-cabin, her laptop open, surrounded by 3 members of her mobile crisis team who had scrambled to meet the jet. On the large monitor built into the cabin wall was the face of Arthur Thorne, the General Counsel for Caldwell Ventures, beaming in via encrypted satellite link from New York. It's worse than we thought, Serena, Thorne said, his usually stoic face grim. We pulled Sterling's personnel file and cross-referenced it with passenger manifests for the last 36 months. This isn't the first time he's bumped a revenue passenger. Serena sipped sparkling water. Give me the numbers, Arthur. We've confirmed 14 separate incidents in the last 3 years where full-fare first-class or business-class passengers were mysteriously downgraded at the gate due to seat malfunctions or system errors, only for those seats to be occupied by young women with no prior booking history, Thorne explained, sliding a digital dossier across the screen. Tiffany Vanderbilt is just the latest in a long con. He's been using Horizon Air as his personal dating service. Serena scrolled through the dossier on her laptop. The faces of the women changed, but the pattern was identical. Sterling used his authority to bully gate agents, displace high-value customers, and impress his flavor of the month. The estimated revenue loss from ticket refunds and compensation vouchers issued to the displaced passengers is upwards of $250,000, Thorne continued. That's not including the free champagne, caviar, and meals he gifted these women. It's grand larceny, masked as operational hiccups. Serena closed the laptop with a snap that echoed in the quiet cabin. It's not just theft, Arthur. It's rotting the culture. I saw the gate agent's face today. She was terrified of him. How can we build a world-class airline if our staff is afraid of the pilots? We can't, Thorne agreed. I have drafted the termination papers for cause. Gross misconduct, theft of company resources, violation of FAA protocols regarding cockpit visitors. Yes, we have proof he lets them sit up front. And now, assault and unlawful imprisonment of the CEO. Good, Serena said, leaning back and looking out the oval window at the deep indigo sky. They were already passing the halfway point. They would beat Sterling to London by 90 minutes. I want everything ready, Arthur. When he lands, I want his world to stop spinning. 1,000 miles behind them, and 10,000 feet lower, the mood in the cockpit of Horizon Flight 882 was very different. Captain Richard Sterling was feeling expansive. He had the autopilot engaged, a belly full of the first-class roasted chicken that was meant for seat. And Tiffany Vanderbilt was currently perched on the observer's jump seat behind him, giggling as she wore his spare headset. "Oh my God, Ricky, I can hear the other pilots," she squealed, looking out the front windshield at the endless expanse of clouds. "This is so cool. You are like the king up here." "King of the skies, babe," Sterling winked, turning in his seat to leer at her. "Told you I'd take care of you. Much better than back in steerage with the plebs, right?" In the right-hand seat, First Officer David Jenkins was staring rigidly at his instruments. His knuckles were white as he gripped the yoke, even though autopilot was on. "Captain," Jenkins said, his voice tight. "We're entering oceanic airspace monitored by Shanwick. We really shouldn't have unauthorized personnel in the cockpit during this phase. If there's a surprise inspection upon landing—" Sterling laughed, a dismissive wave of his hand. "Jenkins, you need to relax. Who's going to inspect us? Old man Henderson in Heathrow? I've been drinking with him for a decade. And besides," he motioned to Tiffany, "who's going to report us? You?" The threat hung in the air. Jenkins was 28, 10 years Sterling's junior, trying to build his hours for a captaincy. Crossing a senior captain like Sterling was career suicide at Horizon. "No, sir," Jenkins mumbled, defeated. "That's what I thought. Fly the plane, Davy. Let me handle the PR." Sterling turned back to Tiffany, pointing out a constellation. Tiffany leaned forward, her expensive perfume filling the small space, overpowering the smell of ozone and electronics. "So, what happened to that awful woman? The one in the hoodie?" "Who cares?" Sterling chuckled. "She's probably still sitting in a holding cell at JFK waiting for a public defender. People like that, they try to game the system, and they get burned. She thought she could just waltz into first class. I taught her a lesson in aerodynamics. Trash falls to the bottom." Tiffany giggled. "You're so bad, Ricky." "I'm the best," Sterling said, checking his watch. 3 more hours. I've got a table booked at Novikov tonight. We're going to celebrate." He had no idea that the trash he had discarded was currently flying above him in a jet worth more than his entire lifetime earnings, preparing a reception committee that would redefine the word celebration. The sun began to set over the Atlantic, casting long shadows across the clouds. In the cockpit of Flight 882, the darkness felt cozy, a protective cocoon for Sterling's ego. But in the G650 overhead, the darkness was a weapon, a cloak under which Serena Caldwell was sharpening her knives. Heathrow Airport's Terminal 3 was bustling with the usual evening rush of transatlantic arrivals. But at Gate 24, a strange calm prevailed. The area around the jet bridge door had been cordoned off by airport security. Passengers waiting for other flights glanced curiously at the assembly waiting there. It wasn't the usual scattering of chauffeurs holding iPads with names on them. Standing front and center was Serena Caldwell. She still wore the hoodie, backpack slung over one shoulder. Flanked on her left was Elias Thorne, the impeccably tailored European Director of Operations for Horizon Air, a man known for his ruthlessness in negotiations. On her right stood two officers from the London Metropolitan Police Service. Behind them stood a phalanx of 4 lawyers from a top London firm, holding leather briefcases that looked heavy with intent. The gate agent working the arrival, a middle-aged British woman named Fiona, looked nervous. She had been briefed by Elias Thorne 10 minutes ago. She knew what was coming. "Flight 8882 is on final approach," Fiona announced quietly to Elias. "Wheels down in 4 minutes." Serena nodded. She didn't say a word. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of serene stone. She watched the screen above the gate show the flight path. The little airplane icon was just crossing the perimeter of the airport. Onboard Flight 882, the landing gear deployed with a heavy thunk. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Sterling." His voice oozed over the PA system one last time. "We have just touched down at London Heathrow, 20 minutes ahead of schedule, because I know you're all eager to start your evening. It's been a pleasure having you up front with me, having you on board with us today. On behalf of myself and the crew, thanks for choosing Horizon." He greased the landing, barely a bump as the massive tires kissed the tarmac. He was feeling invincible. He taxied the plane toward Gate 24, whistling a tune. "Nice landing, Cap," Jenkins said, relieved the flight was over. "Like butter, Jenkins. Like butter," Sterling grinned. "All right, I'm going to pop the main door. You finish the shutdown checklist." Sterling emerged from the cockpit, straightening his tie and putting on his uniform jacket. He wanted to look sharp for his exit. Tiffany was already waiting by the door, reapplying lip gloss, her leopard print coat standing out against the drab galley walls. Beatrice, the lead flight attendant, looked at Sterling with disdain but said nothing. She just disarmed the door. The jet bridge connected with a groan. The seal was pressurized. Beatrice rotated the heavy handle and pushed the door open. Cool London air rushed in. "After you, my dear," Sterling said gallantly to Tiffany, gesturing for her to lead the way. Tiffany strutted down the ribbed rubber flooring of the jet bridge, her heels clicking loudly. Sterling followed a foot behind her, chest puffed out, ready to receive the admiring glances of the terminal. Tiffany stepped out of the tunnel and into the gate area. She stopped dead. Instead of the chaotic embrace of a busy terminal, she was met with a silent semicircle of people in dark suits, and the police. Sterling bumped into her back. "Whoa, Tiff, what's the hold?" He stepped around her and froze. His eyes tried to make sense of the tableau before him. He saw the police bobbies. He saw the suits. He saw Elias Thorne, the big boss from the London office, looking furious. And then his eyes landed in the center. The hoodie, the leggings, the messy bun. Serena Caldwell was standing there, looking not like a stranded passenger, but like an executioner waiting for the condemned. A cold dread, heavier than anything he had ever felt, washed over Sterling. His stomach dropped past his knees. Miss Caldwell? Sterling stammered. His voice was a squeak, stripped of all its cockpit bravado. You were in New York. I saw the police. Serena didn't answer him directly. She just took one slow step forward. The silence stretched, agonizingly taut. "Good evening, Richard," Serena said finally. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. "I hope you enjoyed the flight. It was very expensive." Sterling looked wildly at Elias Thorne, desperate for an ally. "Mr. Thorne, what is this? This woman, she was disruptive at JFK. I had her removed for safety protocol." "Shut up, Richard," Elias Thorne barked. The venom in his voice made Sterling flinch. "Just shut your mouth. You have done enough damage." Thorne stepped forward, pulling a sheaf of papers from the lawyer standing next to him. "Captain Richard Sterling," Thorne began, reading from the document formally. "Effective immediately, your employment with Horizon Air is terminated for gross misconduct, breach of contract, theft of company property, and violating FAA safety regulations regarding unauthorized access to the flight deck." Sterling felt dizzy. "Terminated? You can't just— The union has already been notified of the charges and the overwhelming evidence against you," Thorne cut him off. "They aren't going to touch you." Sterling looked back at Serena, his eyes pleading. He still didn't quite understand the magnitude of who she was. He just thought she was a wealthy, vindictive passenger who had somehow beaten him here. "Look, lady, I don't know who you know or how much you paid these guys to set this up." Sterling tried to rally some of his old arrogance. "But you can't do this. I'm the captain." Serena finally smiled. It was a terrifying, mirthless smile. "You seem confused, Richard," she said softly. "Let me clarify the chain of command for you." She gestured around her. "Mr. Thorne works for Horizon Air. Horizon Air is a subsidiary of Caldwell Ventures." She placed a hand flat on her own chest. "I am Serena Caldwell. I am Caldwell Ventures. I bought this airline 3 weeks ago. I own the fuel you burned. I own the uniform on your back. And until 30 seconds ago, I owned your mortgage." The color drained completely from Sterling's face. He looked like a wax figure, melting under heat. He looked at the plane behind him, then back at the woman in the hoodie. You're the owner," he whispered, horrified. "And you," Serena said, her voice hardening into steel, "are fired. Get off my property." She pointed toward the terminal exit. Sterling stood paralyzed, his entire identity crumbling. He looked at Tiffany, desperate for some support. Tiffany Vanderbilt looked at Sterling, then at Serena, and did the math instantly. The pilot was broke. The woman in the hoodie was a billionaire. Tiffany stepped away from Sterling as if he were contagious. "Wait a minute," Tiffany said, her voice shrill, addressing Serena. "I didn't know. He told me it was okay. He said he had free upgrades. I'm a victim here too." Serena turned her gaze to the woman in the leopard coat. It was not a sympathetic gaze. "Are you Ms. Vanderbilt?" Serena beckoned to one of the lawyers, who stepped forward with an iPad displaying an invoice. "According to my records, you occupied seat 1A on Flight 882, a seat retailing for $14,500 one way," Serena said calmly. "You didn't pay for this ticket. You conspired with a terminated employee to steal this service." "Steal?" Tiffany shrieked. "He invited me." "He had no authority to do so," Serena said, "which makes you a stowaway in possession of stolen goods, namely, the caviar and champagne you consumed." Serena nodded to the police officers. "Officers, This woman has defrauded the airline of significant revenue. We would like to press charges for theft of services under UK law unless restitution is made immediately. One of the bobbies stepped toward Tiffany, pulling out his notebook. "Madam, I'll need your passport." Tiffany turned furiously on Sterling, shoving him hard in the chest. "You bastard! You said you owned the plane. You said it was taken care of. I'm not going to jail for you, you loser." Sterling stumbled back, utterly alone. He was stripped of his rank, his job, his girl, and his dignity, all within 2 minutes of stepping off the plane. Serena watched the chaos with cold detachment. She turned to Elias Thorne. "Elias, ensure Mr. Sterling's return ticket is cancelled. He can find his own way back to New York. Economy." She turned and began to walk away, her security team falling in around her. She didn't look back. She had a company to save, and she had just taken out the trash. As she walked toward the VIP exit, she passed the crew of Flight 882, who had just disembarked and were watching the scene in stunned silence. Serena stopped in front of First Officer Jenkins. He looked terrified that he was next. "Mr. Jenkins," Serena said. "Yes. Yes, ma'am," he gulped. "You were in a difficult position today," she said. "Coercion by a senior captain is a serious issue. We will be reviewing the cockpit voice recorder to confirm your reluctance to participate in Captain Sterling's activities." Jenkins nodded frantically. "I tried to tell him, ma'am, about the cockpit rules, about the seat." "I know," Serena said, her voice softening slightly. "I'm promoting you to acting captain for the return leg tomorrow. Don't let me down." She walked away, leaving Jenkins stunned with relief and a sudden, fierce loyalty to the woman in the hoodie. Behind her, the sounds of Tiffany shrieking about her rights and Sterling stammering incoherently to the police echoed in the terminal. Karma hadn't just hit. It had landed a jumbo jet on them. The rain in London is indifferent to your bank account balance, but it somehow feels colder when you are unemployed and stranded. Richard Sterling stood on the curb outside Terminal 3, watching the taillights of Serena Caldwell's motorcade disappear into the mist. He reached for his phone to call the crew hotel shuttle, a habit ingrained over 20 years of flying. Then he stopped. He wasn't crew anymore. He wasn't eligible for the shuttle. He wasn't even eligible for the staff discount at the airport coffee shop. He checked his bank app. He had plenty of money. For now. But the lifestyle he led, the alimony payments to 2 ex-wives, the lease on the Porsche, the dinners at Nobu, that required a captain's salary, a salary that had just evaporated. He walked back inside to the ticket counter of a rival airline, British Airways. He needed to get back to New York. He approached the agent, a man who looked tired. "One way to JFK, please," Sterling said, trying to muster some dignity. "Passport?" the agent asked. Sterling handed it over. The agent typed for a moment. "That will be 2,400 plus for a last-minute economy seat, sir." 2,000? Sterling choked. "Do you know who I am? I'm a captain with Horizon. Or, I was. Can't you offer a professional courtesy?" The agent looked at him over the rim of his glasses. "Sir, I just saw a memo come through the Alliance network about 30 minutes ago. It's a do not board advisory for a Mr. Richard Sterling regarding security risks and gross misconduct. I can sell you a ticket, but I can't give you a discount. Frankly, I'm surprised the system is letting me sell you a seat at all." Sterling paid. He sat in seat 44E, a middle seat in the very back of the plane, wedged between a crying toddler and a man eating a tuna sandwich. As the plane taxied, he looked out the window at the Horizon 777 he had captained just hours ago. It was being towed to a maintenance hangar. It looked majestic. It looked like a castle he had been exiled from forever. Meanwhile, the video from JFK had hit the internet. A passenger in row 2 had recorded the entire interaction. Sterling knocking the phone out of Serena's hand, the walk of shame, the sneering comments. The video was titled, "Pilot Bullies Hoodie Girl Has No Idea She Owns the Plane." By the time Serena's private jet landed back in New York 2 days later, the video had 40 million views. The comments section was a bloodbath for Richard Sterling. Imagine firing your boss because you wanted to impress a date. Edgar Ribbozo. The way she walked off with so much dignity. Queen behavior. I cancelled my flight with another airline and booked Horizon just because of this lady. Serena didn't watch the video. She was too busy saving the company. 1 week after the incident, Serena held a town hall meeting at the Horizon Air headquarters in Queens. The massive hangar was filled with mechanics, flight attendants, pilots, and gate agents. The air was thick with nervous energy. They had all heard the rumors. They expected a purge. Serena walked onto the stage. She wasn't wearing a hoodie this time, but she wasn't wearing a power suit either. She wore the standard Horizon Air ground crew uniform, a navy blue polo and slacks. The crowd went silent. "Good morning," Serena said, her voice amplified by the speakers. "My name is Serena, and I work for you." A murmur went through the crowd. "For too long," she continued, "this airline has been run by people who think they are above the rules. Captains who treat the cabin crew like servants. Executives who treat passengers like cargo. That ends today." She clicked a remote, and a picture of Richard Sterling appeared on the massive screen behind her. "This man thought his rank gave him the right to humiliate others," Serena said. "He is no longer with us. But his departure isn't just about punishment. It's about a promise. If you are a gate agent and a pilot screams at you to break policy, you call me. If you are a flight attendant and a passenger treats you with disrespect, we will back you up. We are going to be the airline of dignity." The applause started slowly, from the back, the baggage handlers and the cleaners. Then the gate agents joined in, then the flight attendants. Finally the pilots, the good ones who had hated Sterling's bullying for years, stood up and cheered. Serena raised a hand. "One more thing. I'd like to introduce our new director of customer experience." Chloe, the young gate agent from JFK, who had been berated by Sterling, walked onto the stage. She looked terrified but proud. Serena put an arm around her. "Chloe showed integrity when it was difficult," Serena said. "That is the future of Horizon." The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Horizon Air's on-time performance had skyrocketed. Customer satisfaction scores were the highest in the industry. The stock price had doubled. As for the cost of that fateful flight, Tiffany Vanderbilt never paid the $14,500 invoice. Horizon Air sued her for theft of services. The case was settled out of court, but the legal fees bankrupted her small influencer LLC. She was last seen flying Spirit Airlines, complaining about the baggage fees on TikTok. David Jenkins, the young first officer, was now the youngest captain in the fleet. He was known for buying coffee for his gate agents and treating every passenger, from 1A to 44E, with absolute respect. And Richard Sterling, he applied to every major airline, Delta, United, American, even the cargo carriers like FedEx. But the aviation world is small. The memo about his gross misconduct and the viral video made him radioactive. No insurance company would cover a pilot with a history of unlawful imprisonment of a CEO. He eventually found work. Serena was walking through JFK Terminal 4, one rainy Tuesday, heading to a board meeting. She stopped at a Hudson newsstand to buy a bottle of water. The man behind the counter kept his head down, stocking magazines. He wore a generic grey vest. He looked older, his hair thinning, the arrogance scrubbed out of his posture by months of humility. "That'll be $4, please," he mumbled. Serena recognized the voice. She paused. Richard Sterling looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, the bustling terminal faded away. Sterling looked at the woman who had once sat in the dust of the boarding area, the woman he had stepped over. He looked at the CEO of the airline he used to fly for. He opened his mouth to say something. An apology? A beg for a job? An insult? But he found he had no voice. The shame was a physical weight in his throat. Serena placed a $5 bill on the counter. "Keep the change, Richard," she said softly. She picked up her water and walked away, heading toward the first-class lounge, leaving him standing among the magazines and the candy bars, grounded forever. The story of Flight 882 isn't just about a bad pilot or a secret billionaire. It's a reminder that character is revealed not when we are comfortable, but when we have power over others. Richard Sterling had the uniform, the title and the authority, but he lacked the one thing that money can't buy: decency. Serena Caldwell didn't destroy Richard Sterling. She simply held up a mirror and let him destroy himself. In a world obsessed with status, symbols, and VIP treatment, it's easy to forget that the most important person in the room might be the quiet one in the corner, wearing a hoodie, taking notes. The next time you're in an airport or a boardroom or just walking down the street, remember this. Treat the janitor with the same respect as the CEO. Because you never know when the person you're stepping over is actually the one signing your paycheck. What a ride, right? It's terrifying to think how many Richard Sterlings are out there, thinking they own the sky. But it's even more satisfying to see them crash and burn. I want to know what you would have done if you were Serena. Would you have revealed yourself right there on the plane, or would you have waited to destroy him in London like she did? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of high-flying justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel soar. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. We post new karma-filled dramas every week. Thanks for watching, and fly safe.